Welcome, everybody, to another Village Torah discussion with me, your host, Rabbi Drew. This week's Torah portion is Noah. What a familiar Torah portion. Certainly a familiar personality that we probably have heard of who is in the Torah. And I want to explore something we don't normally discuss here, which is numbers. That's right. We're going to be talking numbers today because, as it turns out, numbers appear a lot. There's some mathematics going on in this week's Torah portion. And I want to discuss several different things involving math, some on the simpler side and some a little bit more intricate. So let's dive into them right now. The first of these is the size of the ark. And as we'll see, it's actually pretty simple. So we read here that God said to Noah, I have decided to put an end to all flesh, for the earth is filled with lawlessness because of them. I am about to destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of some sort of wood. Make it an ark with compartments and cover it inside and out with pitch. Let me quickly say, it says, make yourself an ark with gopher wood. The gopher is actually the word in Hebrew, gopher. So the gopher is not a gopher like we think that is a little furry rodent in the ground. No. This is an untranslated Hebrew word here. Okay. This is how you shall make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Now, and then it keeps going on of how else you should build it and so forth. But as far as the size, when we discuss a cubit, typically a cubit is this. You may say, well, what is this? Well, it's usually about from your elbow to the end of your hand. So that is an amma. That is, that's the word here in Hebrew is an amma for what I just mentioned. From here to here, that is an amma, or in English, which I don't know if it came from Greek or Latin, is this word cubit. So now you have a sense, and I don't know if we want to say it's probably roughly a foot and a half. So maybe we're talking a 450 foot ship by, I don't know, 75-ish feet. We can guesstimate is sort of what is being sized up here. Okay, that is actually, as it comes to numbers, pretty simple. So that is one thing. That is the ark size. Now, when it comes to animals, the end of this passage here, it actually says, from birds of every kind, cattle of every kind of creeping thing on earth, 2 of each shall come to you to stay alive. So in a simple reading, 2 of everything, that's how many are on this ark, right? Not so simple, because we then read, and this is in just a few verses later, the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark with all your household, for you alone have I found righteous before me in this generation. Of every pure animal you shall take 7 pairs, males and their mates, and of every animal that is not pure, 2, a male and its mate. And of the birds of the sky also 7 pairs, male and female, to keep seed alive upon all the earth. 4 and 7 days. Okay, then we get into more numbers, which we're going to hold off for now. But when we think about how many we're actually talking about, well, it seems that as long as it's a pure animal, like 7 animals. So which 7 pairs, 7 pairs, males and their mates. So you're actually taking 14 of these. You're taking 14 of them. And then the birds of the sky, also 7 pairs, males and female. So that seems to be the distinction here. If it's a pure animal, and by pure, it's interesting because it doesn't discuss any of this in Genesis. What's pure, what's not pure. I think the idea later on is what we will see in Leviticus as far as what is to be considered pure and what is to be considered impure. And really, it seems to be the point of the pure animals is not necessarily just that they should be more plentiful, more of them, but I think also actually that they should be offered for sacrifice. You bring more, okay, the non-pure animals, you bring them, but you want to sacrifice, you have to bring extra so that you can sacrifice. I think that's what's going on here. Now, I will point out, it does later on say of the pure animals, two of each, male and female, came to Noah into the ark as God had commanded Noah. Now, this clearly presents to us a really interesting opportunity to take a deep dive next year as to how many animals did he actually take on. But I think from the simple reading, it's okay, fine. At least two pairs of everything, both a male and female, two mating pairs. How about that? At least two mating pairs of every single animal, at the very least, and certainly 7 for those, what we just read, 7 of the pure animals, presumably and possibly to offer sacrifices. But as I mentioned, that is something we can explore in further depth next year, perhaps. Or we can just schmooze about it here in the hallways. Okay. So that is a sense. We usually talk about 2 by 2, and certainly 2 out of these 3 mentions as far as how many animals, how many pairs, how many were to go on, were supposed to go on, did go on. It seems like it's 2, except for the one mentioned here in the 7th chapter, as far as 7 for the pure ones. So far, we've talked about size of the ark. We've talked about number of animals. Now let's talk about age of Noah. He's an old man. He's actually in triple digits old, quite hundreds of years old. So Noah was 600 years old when the flood came. 600 years old. Pretty old. Waters upon the earth. Okay. We have all this, yada, yada, yada. But here's where it gets interesting. On the 7th day, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. Now, the 7th day is referring here when God comes to Noah and says, I'm going to wipe the face of the earth in 7 days. So this is now the culmination of that. You've had a week, Noah. Hopefully you've got your ship built. So now the 7th day has come. Okay. And on the 7th day, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep. Okay. And the rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Okay. So we're going to get, so he is already 600. And then we see, now I'm going to skip ahead. You may say, why are you skipping ahead? I'm going to skip ahead. Because we later on see at the end of the whole Noah story, after the end of the flood, don't worry, we're not skipping the flood. But at the end of it, we see that Noah lived after the flood 350 years. And all the days of Noah came to 950 years, and then he died. So he had this experience for, I want to say, like basically 2/3 of his life. He lived pre-flood, and then another 350 afterwards. It's a long time. It's a lot of time. So who knows? That's definitely makes for some interesting stories he could probably bring from what he had remembered in the centuries pre-flood, in the antediluvian era, to share with those who live post-flood. Interesting possibilities. But he certainly lived a long time, and this flood certainly didn't kill him. And what we discussed last year, as far as the episode that occurred upon his arriving onto dry earth, to dry ground, and planting a vineyard, and what happened in that whole story, we discussed that last year. But he still lived another 3.5 centuries, a long time. Okay, so we've talked so far numbers, about size of the ark, about the age of Noah, and also how many animals. But now we get into, all of those have been pretty straightforward numbers, straightforward math, nothing complicated. Debates, I'm sure, but nothing complicated. Now, here is where it gets interesting, because I'm trying to come up with a timeline. What exactly is the timeline? Because yes, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but how long was the whole ordeal? How long were they out to sea? Noah, his wife, sons, all these animals, however many there were. however many species there were, we don't know. I don't think it mentions how many species there are. So I want to continue in this vein of just reading the text. We're not talking about commentators. Yes, frequently in this space, we mention Talmudic rabbis and the Talmudic takes on these Torah texts. We also often talk about midrashim, right? Other rabbinic narrative expansion. And we also often talk about medieval commentators. There are lots of different ways we can look at other commentaries, takes on these texts. But for this, we're just looking at the Torah text itself. Okay. We're not going to all these other discussions. I just want to, on the face of it, this is just so we can take a step back. These are not obscure texts. These exist certainly in our tradition, right? This is in Genesis. This is in our Jewish biblical tradition. But this is something that has gotten the world over. This is certainly something that is well known, right? These biblical texts. We have so many other people know the stories in the 5 books of Moses, and certainly here in this first one in Genesis. And this is a pretty big story. This is not an obscure story. If anybody asks, who was involved in the flood, whose ark, I'm pretty sure 99.5 out of 100 people will tell you it was Noah. So at least a lot of people know. But how many days? If you were to say how old was Noah, okay, most people might not have gotten that. And if you were to say how many animals, okay, at least most people would say 2 by 2 they came. Okay, so at least for every species, at least two pairing mate couples went on of each species. So we have so far discussed the size of the ark, and the numbers associated with that. We have talked about the age of Noah. Also, again, straightforward, simple numbers, at least as enumerated in the Torah text. And we also now have seen numbers of animals. That's a little bit tricky, a little bit of they seem to disagree with each other, but at the very least, we know 2 by 2 they came. They were in 2 separate pairing couples for each species, and according to one text, that was only for the impure animals, but for the pure, the clean animals that probably could have been offered up as sacrifices, they had 7 of those. So 14 of those animals and 4 of the unclean. Okay, so still fairly straightforward, simple math and numbers. We're going to transition now to something a little bit different, which is how long was Noah out to sea? I think if you were to ask, if you were to see someone on the street holding up a microphone to someone and asking people who had the flood, whose ark was it, they'd say Noah. How many days did it rain? 40 days, 40 nights. How many animals went? 2 by 2 that they came. So at least there's a lot of these are in the sort of the popular consciousness. People seem to tend to know these things. Yes, this is very much a Jewish text. This is in Genesis. This is in our Torah. This is in our Bible. Yet, and certainly, but it's also gone beyond our boundaries, right? People the world over know the book of Genesis, and certainly America. A lot of Americans know these stories. You don't have to be Jewish to know these stories. So it's really fascinating, I think, for us to explore, to see what's going on here in the story. And I also want us to get a better sense of all of these parts of this really famous, popular story. I think it will help us understand the story better. One thing you may have noticed is that often in this space, in this series, we not only look at the Torah text itself, we also look at Talmudic textual discussions on the Torah texts. Sometimes we'll look at midrashim, the rabbinic narrative expansions. Sometimes we'll look at Jewish medieval biblical commentators on these texts to help develop a further sense of what is going on in these texts. But I think it's really helpful for us, since this is such a familiar, common, a popular text, for us to just get an understanding of what the text even says, for us to get a sense of what is going on here. certainly we can, if we want next year, we can go in and look at the biblical commentators or the Talmudic commentary and textual discussion as to how many animals were there. And that actually went on the ship. How many were there? How many went? We can certainly look at that. And we can probably also look at the age of Noah. And also we can look at the next discussion. But for now, I just want to keep it to a surface read, understand what the actual text of the Torah says as far as how long were they out to sea. So this is interesting. Now, I do have to put one further caveat, which is when we discuss months here, we are not talking about the Gregorian calendar of our 30-day or 31-day months. We are talking about this kind of like the Jewish calendar, where we have 12 and sometimes 13 months. So that is what we're working off of. That is the calendar that we're working with. That basically it could be a 30-day. So 29, 30 days roughly or basically when we talk about months, we literally mean the word off of which month is based, which is moon. They are essentially moons. Which moon was it? The next moon, the next moon, the next moon. So months, these moons are roughly 29 or 30 days each. Not exactly clear, not exactly standard or always the same, but hopefully that's a helpful framing for what we mean when we talk about months. Not our 30 or 31-day months. We're talking about 29 or 30-day months of more of a lunisolar calendar. So let's dive into these calculations. Now, the first time we encounter any sort of chronology here is when God first approaches Noah here it is the 7th chapter. And God says, in 7 days, I will make it rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and I will blot out from the earth all existence that I created. So now we have God approaching him saying, I'll give you a week. I'll give you 1 week. And so then we see still in the 7th chapter, Noah was 600 years old when the flood came, and all the different things about the animals. And then on the 7th day, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. So God kept his word. And then in the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst apart, and the floodgates of the sky broke open. The rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. So, so we have this, everything starts. Second month, 17th day. Now, I don't know about you. What stands out to me really twofold. One, we're counting in Noah's life. It's not a separate counting, an independent calendar. It is subjective to Noah's own life, which is already really fascinating. The second thing is the 17th day. It stands out as actually being quite unspecial. There's nothing special. If you were to think about a 29 or 30-day month, you'd say maybe the middle of the month, right? 15th day-ish. This is the 17th day. So there's not actually absolutely nothing special about it. Okay. So then we continue. And the flood continued 40 days on the earth, and the waters increased and raised the ark so that it rose above the earth. The waters swelled and increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark drifted upon the waters. When the waters had swelled much more upon the earth, all the highest mountains everywhere under the sky were covered. 15, there we go, another number. 15 cubits higher did the waters swell as the mountains were covered. That's 45 feet, roughly, give or take. That's pretty high. And all flesh that stirred on earth perished, birds, cattle, beasts, and all the things that swarmed upon the earth, and all humankind. All in whose nostrils was the merest breath of life, all that was on dry land died. All existence on earth was blotted out. Humans, cattle, creeping things, and birds of the sky, they were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. And when the water swelled. Now this is an interesting translational piece. It says, and when the waters, I don't know, just the Hebrew itself, and the water swelled on the earth 150 days. So it seems like so far we've got it's everything starts the 17th day of the 2nd month of Noah's life in his 600th year, goes for 40 days, and then this is a little unclear, but this is how it seems to read. After those 40 days, then the waters continued to increase. The ambiguity here is, are these 150 days of the water increasing inclusive of the 40 days of rain, or does it only start after the 40 days? That's unclear here. We then see at later point, and this is now the 8th chapter, that God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the cattle that were with him in the ark, and God caused a wind to blow across the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the floodgates of the sky were stopped up, and the rain from the sky was held back. The waters then receded steadily from the earth. At the end of 150 days, the waters diminished. So that brings us to a new question. We already just read that the waters increased for 150 days. So this might be sort of the opposite slope, that they are now decreasing. That seems to be a simple and straightforward read. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's how it reads to me. So that on the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Now we have, once again, a number ending in 7. You would have figured maybe it could be a special day, whether it's the first of the month, the last of the month, or even smack dab the Ides of the month, the 15th day. But no, we're on the 17th. So the waters all start on the 27th day of the second month. And now the ark is now at least resting on the mountains here. So super, super tippy top on the 17th day of the 7th month. Okay. The waters went on diminishing until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first of the month, so that is a significant day, the tops of the mountains became visible. Okay, so previously the ark was able to rest upon the tops of the mountains even though they weren't visible. So at least it stopped, but now they do become visible. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent out the raven. It went to and fro until the waters had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out the dove to see whether the waters had decreased from the surface of the ground. But the dove could not find a... It's funny because we don't know if the raven ever came back. But the dove could not find a resting place for its foot and returned to him to the ark, for there was water all over the earth. So putting out his hand, he took it into the ark with him. We never hear the same from the raven, but that's a story for another time. He waited another 7 days and again sent out the dove from the ark. The dove came back to him toward evening, and there in its bill was a plucked off olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the waters had decreased on the earth. Okay, third time's a charm, right? Third time's a charm. He waited still another 7 days and sent the dove forth, and it did not return to him anymore. It was gone. It found good resting place. In the 601st year, in the first month, on the first of the month, the waters began to dry from the earth. And when Noah removed the covering of the ark, he saw that the surface of the ground was drying. And in the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dry. Okay. Story is over. Then what we actually then see is God telling Noah, okay, now it's time for you to get out of the ark. I told you to get on the ark. You did it. Now it's time to leave. Time to get back to regular living. Okay. I came up with a nice little timeline. So this is a lot to keep straight. It's a lot to keep in order. So that is why I came up with a little timeline, and which is basically everything starts I came up with my own little timeline, just taking notes. And what I found was everything starts in the 600th year of Noah's life. And everything starts, the rains, all that, second month, 17th day. Now, ultimately, everything ends the 27th day of the second month, but of his 601st year. So this is a more than a year process. It's it's second month to second month, so it's just the difference of the extra 10 days. Now, it's certainly over 300 days. Not exactly sure how to begin counting this, but just a quick rundown. So everything starts of Noah's life, the 600th year, second month, and 17th day. Then for 40 days and 40 nights it rains, and then there's 150 days where the waters are increasing. Now, whether that's inclusive or not of the 40 days and 40 nights is unclear. Then there's 150 days where the water recedes. Then the 7th month and the 17th day of that month is when the ark comes to rest on the top of Mount Ararat. And the waters diminish until the first day of the 10th month. That's when the tops of the mountains are visible. And then the end of 40 days, Noah opens the window. He sends 3 birds. Third time is a charm. And then waters begin to dry. That's the first day of the first month of his 601st year. And then the earth is dry on the 27th day of that second month of Noah's life in his 601st year. So ultimately, the answer is I didn't actually do the actually how many days it was, but so ultimately the number that we get is I don't really know how many days it is exactly. It's certainly over a year, but basically it's 12 months and then 10 days because it starts in the second month, 17th day of that month, and ends the next year, also the second month, but now the 27th. One of the interesting things as we talk about all these numbers, certainly here in this particular story, is how many 7s there are. First of the months, I get that makes a lot of sense, right? We have the first of the month, we have twice we get mentions of that, which is on the 10th month, which is the tops of the mountains are visible, and also the waters begin to dry on the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year. But all these 7s, this is so curious to me. I just have to point this out. I don't know what to do with it. Everything starts second month, but the 17th day. And then we also see the 17th day is the 7th month when it came to rest on Mount Ararat. And then we get 27 when the earth was dry on that second month of the next year. So 7s are a pretty big number here, which just might all go back to 7 just being a very significant biblical number, going back to what we started with, where God tells Noah, in 7 days, I'm going to do this because in 7 days, I created the earth. In 7 days, right? You just get all these 7s. So I think that's what's going on. Okay. So this was a lot. This was a lot of numbers. If you don't like numbers, I'm sorry, but hopefully this was an interesting look, a fresh look at the Noah story, certainly the flood story, and how numbers are a part of all of this. So with that, I want to thank you for watching. And before we go, I just want to acknowledge that all Jewish life and programming here at Majestic Care Cedar Village are due to the support of Jewish Home of Cincinnati. Thank you so much. With that, I want to say thank you so much for watching and Shabbat Shalom.